This is the DRS train.
Welcome to another episode of the DRS Train podcast. With us today, once again, is Demeter, and we're going to review the Monaco Grand Prix. Demeter, how have you been? Thanks for joining us again. How are
Hey,
things?
good. We are happy. I guess Motorsports Christmas is what they call it. It'll be the last one for a while, but Motorsports Christmas, good. Definitely, we are full swing into the F1 season now.
And it's a Christmas because we're saying that Monaco and Indy 500 are happening on the same day, right?
And the
What if
Coca-Cola
the Monaco
600,
Grand
yes.
Prix is super boring? Is it still Christmas, or is it like a nightmare? It was a bad joke. I'm just wondering.
It's still
Like,
Christmas. It's still a day where you can sit on your, well, especially in America, it's still a day where you can sit on your couch and from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and have racing on all day. Because on top of that, you have it's the Monaco Grand Prix. You had the British GP for MotoGP in the morning, and then you have the Indy 500 and the Coca-Cola 600. That's four races all day, and they're all lined up perfect.
that's that's a stellar point, actually. And you know what? To be honest, I have very rarely watched all three of those on the same day. But you're right, it is kind of awesome. Um, I also wonder, like, why do they do that? Why is Monaco scheduled on the same day as Indy, scheduled on the same day as MotoGP? Don't you think that's kind of weird? Wouldn't
No,
that be okay?
I
I
mean,
mean,
well, yes and no.
talk to
They're
me about
changing
that.
it next year. They're changing it next year because they want to give F1 drivers the opportunity to race in the Indy 500 while they're still on the grid. However, you
Hmm.
have um, people like Lando and people like Max that think driving in a circle, and Daniel Ricciardo who think driving on a banked circle is insane work and that it is the most
Yeah.
terrifying thing you could ever do. Right? So it's really it's I don't understand why they're gonna move it. It's always been tradition to have them on the same day. It's not insane because it's always been tradition, you know? Traditions can be seen as insane from people who aren't used to them, right? That's just kind of how traditions are. But at the same time, moving it and breaking it, we'll see. Well, moving the Monaco GP to the first weekend of June next year, as they're anticipating to do so, is going to either make a lot of people happy that they don't have to sit on their couch all day, or really
Yeah.
sad because it's become a tradition for families all over America, at the very least, and a lot of people all over the world.
Yeah. I mean, I think you make a great point. And I also understand where the drivers are coming from because if you hit the wall at 90 degrees in Indy, that's the most dangerous thing that can happen in motorsport. If you hit that wall at high speed, 90 degrees, you're going to have a shattered something. And I think it's interesting that they're going to actually try to encourage F1 drivers to participate in the Indy 500, like you mentioned. But I wonder how many would actually do that. It's just such a big risk to do that race. And I just wonder, like, I don't know what you think about this, but my perspective is I'm getting paid so much in F1. It's way safer than Indy. Why would I take the risk to a potentially less prestigious series and race and potentially injure myself and not be able to race in F1 for the rest of the year if I'm badly injured? See where I'm coming from?
I see where you're coming from. I do disagree that Indy is a less
Okay.
prestigious series. A lot there's this
Okay.
notion that IndyCar is where F1 drivers go to die, and that's not true. No, some of them just fit better into IndyCar. It's a completely different car. It might look it might be the same basic principles of an outboard chassis and the open wheel race. But it's a completely different animal in all of its aspects. It's a smaller car. It's a more flexible car. It is definitely lighter, and there's no power steering, none. So, in its own essence, it's a different challenge. It's a lot harder. So, and as somebody who started their motorsports journey in IndyCar, I will defend I might be a little biased. However,
All right.
the facts state that from a driving perspective, they are both equally as hard and present their own challenges. There's a reason that a lot of the rookies only do the road courses if they've come from Formula Two because they're not used to or ready mentally for the ovals. The ovals are a completely different challenge that is half psychological, half physical.
You know what? That's a really good point. I guess I'm influenced by my early years, but I started watching F1 in the late 90s and I was really young. And so Michael Schumacher went on Charlie Rose in like 2001, and he said that I'm not saying I agree or disagree, but Michael said that usually when F1 drivers go to Indy, they dominate, and when Indy drivers go to F1, they don't make it. But I think that's an oversimplification. Maybe even just because the great Michael Schumacher, Schumi said it, it doesn't mean I should be indoctrinated by that, right? I think what you're saying is it's pretty logical. Any thoughts on that? Well, like Michael literally said that. It's
Yeah, and I remember when I don't remember when he said it, but I remember reading it because when he said it,
yeah,
I was two. But he, I don't think we've seen enough of the ladder to make that judgment in the modern era. You'll see a
fair.
lot of F1 drivers go to IndyCar. We've seen Roman Grosjean. We've seen just to be like the basic surface one, right? Roman Grosjean went and he did okay. He didn't do great. He
We
did
didn't. You're
okay.
right.
Um, you have a lot of F2 drivers that have tested and are in NXT or in the NTT series and are racing right now. You have, and they're doing decently well. We don't see anyone go from sorry, excuse me. You don't see anybody go from NXT or NTT to Formula One in the modern era. I haven't seen it. And I've been well, very loosely watching since like 2009 and then seriously started taking up the sport in 2021. Like
Hmm.
being a casual fan, even I never noticed anybody go from Indy to F1. F1 Indy, yeah, for sure.
Technically, what Michael
Fernando
said, just like
Alonso does not count.
no, you're right. I think that's a really good point. I think the rules have changed a little bit, right, in the modern era because we used to see like Mansell went over to Indy at the end of his F1 career and won it. Then you know I'm surprised Michael said that because Montoya and Jacques Villeneuve did okay in F1. So um, yeah, I think that's open for debate. I think it's not clear that I consider F1 the pinnacle, but we shouldn't discount Indy. We also shouldn't discount the Monaco Grand Prix. And yeah, I thought this race was not a classic. Okay, that's my opinion. I think the mandatory two stops made it confusing, and I think it's against the spirit of racing, frankly, to force teams to have to do a certain number of stops. And so what we got was a pretty processional, I thought, race in general. I don't think there were too many surprises. And McLaren basically had track position, and Lando locked up in the first corner, but after that, it was pretty smooth sailing, don't you think? I mean, I think it was pretty straightforward.
Yes and no. I have to agree slash disagree on that. I think
Yeah.
that there was definitely more that happened this year. Well, okay. Everything that happened last year happened um after Sandoval going up the hill. And it all happened in that one corner. I think, or that one straight, excuse me, not a corner. It's not a corner, but after that one corner. Today, things that happened over the race, and no, necessarily wasn't on track, but everything on track caused drama in the storage room. Aside from the fact that Pierre almost took out Franco after almost taking out Yuki, sort of deal. Yes, having two pit stops might have been a way to cope with last year. It, I don't think it had the desired effect. I think they were hoping they would have more strategy, and it did. They had to use strategy, and I think some teams used it well, and some teams failed.
Who
Mercedes being
used
one
it
of
well?
them.
Who used it well in your opinion? Like, if you had to focus on the two teams,
If I had to focus on a team that did it well, I think I have to say Visa Cash App did
totally.
really well because not only did they get an undercut, they scored double points for the first time.
Hmm.
First time?
I
Can't remember the first time.
Something like that. I mean,
This
I
season,
totally
not
agree.
ever, but this season.
Yeah, this season, and it was totally unique because some people thought, oh, look at that gap that Lawson's building. Maybe it's for Verstappen. Actually, they were just doing it for, it was enough to do it for Hajar, his teammate. And what was amazing was that Hajar had that free space to come in, do a short stint on the softs, then put on his final set of tires and go to the end. But then somehow Lawson, even though he was holding back, he still managed to stay in the points as well. That's what was
Mhm.
amazing because usually that driver gets discarded and undercut by all the drivers behind as they're slowing everyone down. But they managed it with both, like you just said. So I'm gonna have to agree there. That was pretty spectacular.
V-Carb did really well. I would say that McLaren did good too. They were also in prime position to it was theirs to lose. Ferrari did not mess up strategy. In fact, they
Amazing.
actually brought Lewis up a little bit, which was shocking
They
to
did.
see.
They did. I mean, I think Hamilton made his life more difficult with the grid penalty he had.
Hmm.
But his like you said, like his stops were really well timed. He actually jumped over, I guess, overcut. Um, I think he overcut. Anyways, he leapfrogged Ajar and Alonso in that first stint, right after he made his first stop. He came out in front of them when he was
Hmm.
behind. I think it was really the best he could do because um, you're kind of stuck in traffic other than that. So he was kind of in the middle of nowhere after that. But at the same time, I think his recovery and strategy was pretty spot on because he really needed a safety car or something else to come into play. That didn't happen, right? So,
Right.
um, we saw some like radio confusion. At one point, he radioed into his engineer and said, "Are you angry at me?" Something isn't right there with the communication between Ferrari and Ricardo Adami and Ferrari yet. You can see and feel like it's not as, I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel like it's not as seamless as it was at McLaren or at Mercedes, obviously. So I don't think Lewis had a bad race, but I think that the grid penalty meant he was out of position, and I think he finished 51 seconds behind the race winner. So, I mean, I don't think you can be happy if you're Lewis.
Lewis
What do you
Lewis
think?
has had issues with communication and his hit wall all season. Like he said, he's it's okay. Let me pause. Lewis was with Bono for so long that they had their own form of language. It's kind of like GP and maps. They have their own form of communication that only they understand at certain points. And if you're trying
Mm.
to not only learn Italian, God knows I don't know if he knows Italian, but he's got it now because he's working for Ferrari, and it is a requirement to get a job at Ferrari that you speak Italian. By the way, if you didn't know that.
Let me remind you one thing, though. The great Kimi Räikkönen didn't even know how to speak one word of Italian, but he's unique. So I totally agree with you. Most people would need to know Italian,
We're talking
otherwise,
about somebody who communicated in one word answers to everything
yeah, that's
and showed
true.
no emotion. You're trying to compare him. No business. Well, well no, he had business. He basically dropped this bombshell on everybody after pretending to be loyal for a year, and then moved. And so now he's got to deal with like the not the consequences, but the consequences of the sudden move. He had a full year to prepare, and he didn't. And I think that there is obviously some of those the gardening leave and things like that where you can't learn certain things, you can't know certain people because you could be passing information, but
Hmm.
still, like, he had all this time to prepare for a different form of communication and he didn't. And I'm going to place some of that blame on him for that because a lot of the communication is it's very not angry but angry from his side.
I agree. And again, I think it just goes back to what you were saying. It's like a new environment, right? So they're still feeling each other out. They're still trying to see like what works, what doesn't. How do I talk to this guy? So we'll see. I'm sure that'll resolve itself. On the flip side, his teammate is sometimes also sounds very angry and has been there for uh, what, 7 seasons now at
Yeah.
Ferrari.
Hmm.
So I mean, let's
Since
take a look at Leclerc for a second in his race to finish up Ferrari here. I mean, he was flying. He's been the quicker Ferrari driver this year, and I don't think there was much Charles could have done differently in this race. I just think track position at Monaco, you're kind of stuck there, right? What do you think?
Well, to kind of blend into Mercedes here, I think Ferrari and Mercedes both had the attitude that they lost the race yesterday. That when they didn't get pole, all hope was lost. You know?
I
So which is the wrong
You think
attitude to have, but still.
they were too defeatist, right? I saw that too. Like Leclerc was so down after qualifying. You just got to think like, you know, why like, you guys like you're Formula One drivers. Like, I don't care if there's been 50 Monaco Grand Prix where only pole has won. You got to have a little bit of like belief that you can make it happen, even if you're second. Right? So I was hoping Leclerc would really like send it up the inside or something and turn one around the outside, but
Well, he tried.
uh, tried. But and the problem is like the cars are so big now, you don't see the same kind of passing. You never saw passing at Monaco, but sometimes you would see people make that move into the Nouvelle chicane right when you come out of the tunnel. And I didn't even see anybody attempt anything in this race. Like it's really bothering. Like it just seems like these cars don't give these drivers the confidence, to make a move around Monaco. And what do you think about that? Because I was frustrated because I think Ferrari had a car to win. I think their car was equal to McLaren this weekend.
This is probably the best they've been, and the reason for that was revealed when they revealed that they went actually backwards in spec for their rear wing. Their rear wing is from last year, both cars, and there is a major difference to that. And it shows. I think you're correct in saying that the cars are too big, but I also said this last week on my own recording for my own podcast that we need to wait until next year to see if these classic tracks truly have outgrown their time because the cars will get shorter. They're supposed to be what, 3 to 4 inches shorter and a little bit thinner
They're
to
still
accommodate.
heavy. They're still really
They're
heavy,
still
but you're
heavy.
right.
It doesn't matter if they're heavy. It matters how much they're able to maneuver themselves, and length can be a really big thing. If you're talking about a car that could possibly not even sit or not even sit horizontally on the track right now without hitting a
That's
wall.
exactly. You're right. You're totally right. That's
So
what I'm saying.
the cars next year have that possibility to do so. So it's a matter of inches. It's a matter of inches in the sport. It's always going to be a matter of inches in the sport. So we have to give it an opportunity because if we keep getting rid of classic tracks, then we're going to end up with places like, um, what is it, Doha? I can't remember what it's actually called in Saudi
You
Arabia where
mean
we
in
have a
Qatar,
Mario Kart track.
In Losail, in Qatar,
No,
Jeddah,
oh, whatever
Jeddah,
the
Jeddah in Saudi
sports
Arabia.
paradise they're building, they want to build that's going to be super dangerous. The turn one that's like 20 stories up in the air.
What?
Can't remember what it's
Oh,
called.
is that being built? I'm out of the
Well,
loop
they
on
had
that.
concept art for it last year, and now they really want to build it, and I don't think that that's possible or safe. And it's a fever dream. But if we get rid of these classic tracks the way they are, because we're gonna lose Spa as an every year track, we're gonna lose Zandvoort after either this year or next year. We're losing a lot of F1 history, and the more they lose those, the more it makes room for these wild ideas that aren't even safe. So we have to give these new cars a chance.
Well said. I mean, you gave such an intellectual and well thought out answer. I'm more of a simple man myself. I think we should just be going to Vallelunga and Brands Hatch and the old Hockenheim, tear down the new one and just make the old one come back. I don't really understand why we deterred from these tracks. Like I get people say that, oh, like we need bigger state, like more commercially viable tracks. Formula One is so popular now that you may as well just go to the best tracks because people will still go there. People just want to be at an F1 track. We don't need to be going to big city centers with tracks that are so forgettable. And I don't like the direction it's headed, Demeter, because yes, it allows these crazy new ideas, like you mentioned, for the new tracks. But what is F1 without these classic tracks? It's not just about, oh, the fancy paddock and, the $1 billion club in F. It's also about beauty of racing and the purity of racing. But yeah. Uh, quickly back to Ferrari. I was personally surprised by their performance because all season in the low speed tracks they've been pretty bad. But I think because Monaco has a lot of curb riding and a lot of bumps, I think it suits their car. Their car is good over the curbs. So that actually also bodes well for Monza when that comes up. So yeah, it was really good. They have a quick car. I hope they can maintain it so we have a closer championship. Um, but yeah, they came up short this weekend. Uh, let's just talk about McLaren quickly, if that's okay with you, because I want to address the winning team. Like, what do you think? Like, how did you assess like Lando and Oscar's race? I thought they were pretty flawless. Overall, they did their jobs pretty well. I don't really know what else I can say about it. Monaco, you really have to make a big mistake to lose from pole. What do you think?
They looked really shaky going into qualifying. Point
Hmm.
blank, there's no arguing that. Oscar he went straight in at Rascasse, I believe. Yeah, Rascasse. And took off his front wing. Lando really wasn't putting laps together that well. Charles kind of looked like he had it made going into qualifying, and then McLaren was just able to pull it together. Specifically, Lando going actually the first time he's the first driver to go sub 70 seconds around the Monaco circuit.
So,
Um, so he set a new lap record with his pole lap, but he also, I think, got not lucky because obviously anyone who can drive Monaco and keep it out of the walls is extremely skilled. But I think that a lot of the timing, there was a couple of red flags during those sessions as well, really helped him because it meant that he didn't have to spend time in the pits against the clock, right? And that's
yeah.
something that McLaren kind of has struggled with, I've noticed, where they spend time in the pits against the clock and it's killed Lando's flow, if you will.
Hmm. Totally right.
Mercedes just had a terrible weekend, but it did help him. It did help him a lot.
Yeah, it it did help him, and I think this was a really seamless team operation in the race for once. So he needed that because Lando's been getting a lot of criticism for his little errors. McLaren seemed to have one driver performing one weekend, the other one not. This was a very good response to the critics. And unlike Ferrari, who you could argue didn't always play the right strategy. I mean, their strategy, Ferrari strategies were good, but I think some people might even say, like, for example, had Lewis stayed within Max's pit window, may have been able to get P4. So, rather than just driving around 45 seconds behind the leaders without losing or gaining, you could say, like, okay, yeah, Lewis did well, but there's still something to be desired. I really think McLaren just maxed out their positions. That's what I'm trying to say. That
Yeah,
it was a pretty flawless
that's a fair
performance.
assessment. That's a
You
fair
know what I
assessment.
mean?
I think that for there's also the not to like bring in the motorsport curses, but or signs of improvement slash success.
Yeah.
But there was earlier on in the weekend, Lando showed up with a band-aid around his thumb, and every single time he's been hurt, he's won.
Hmm.
So people started going crazy, like, "Oh, Lando's gonna win! Lando's gonna win!" So, and you can feel that energy when you are performing. You can feel that energy. You know that people believe in you because this one little thing happened. Superstition is so big in the sport; it's almost just as bad as baseball. Almost just as bad. Not quite as bad, just almost just as
Yeah.
bad. So
Some
you
of those
have because
baseballs.
like
Yeah.
because baseball's bad. It's
Yeah.
really bad. But you have people who saw Lando get hurt at King's Day last year, right before Miami. Then he came out with his maiden win. And then I don't remember what happened the next time, but
That
like
was
every
such
single
a
time,
fluke, though. You're right, though. Keep going. Sorry, keep going.
that furthers it. That's the exact reason why people believe in it. It was such a fluke that a bowler would come out and hit Max halfway through the race, and Lando would be the one to benefit from it. That's
Yeah,
why
and then
people
the
believe in these
safety the
superstitions.
safety car was so corrupt in that race. I mean, I did a rant on this, but they picked up Max instead of picking up Lando, which meant Lando, who had missed the pit lane entrance, could go around the circuit at full speed and still get that pit stop in, while the others were behind the safety car. Shouldn't have happened. The safety car needs to pick up the leader. And Bernd Mailander admitted he made a mistake. How often do those mistakes happen in Formula One? That was so suspicious to me. I still have an issue with that race. I really think something happened there.
Clearly, I can see that. I can see that.
Yeah, I was
It's
outraged
been
by
more
that
than a
race.
year.
Yeah, because like I don't forget races like that because it feels like F1 is trying to manipulate something, and those races always stick in my mind. But let's get back to Monaco 2025. To your point, that's interesting. I didn't actually know that Lando had that injury. People were saying
I
that,
don't know
so
what
that's
happened. He showed up with a blue band-aid on his thumb after rolling out of bed and running down the street. Okay.
yep.
The one thing that Monaco brings is the one thing I've noticed Monaco brings out is their more relaxed side because they're staying at home. They get to sleep in their own beds. It's all psychological, right? So you're gonna get for a track that this track and F1 TV said this is more of a psychological performance than a physical performance. It's always going to be because to stay out of such a thin wall
Mm.
takes more focus and more concentration over not a longer period of time, but more laps, which actually is not true because Monaco is the only race on the calendar that does not reach the 300 meters. No, that's not right. Kilometers. Thank you. Kilometers is the word I was looking for. 300-kilometer mark.
Demeter,
This,
your point is so pertinent to this race too, because like let's pivot. We're going to move on to the other teams in a second, but let's just note Fernando Alonso's team radio calls during that race. That was so psychologically driven, right? Like he was so tense, he was furious, and it just really emphasizes the psychological aspect of a track like Monaco. Yeah, misreading into that. What do you think about that? I think that ties into what you're saying, right? Like,
I mean, yes and no. There's always pressure to perform because there's so much riding on Monaco itself. Monaco itself is its own thing. If you win Monaco, you've won something more than putting points towards your championship, right? So think about it this way. Monaco is not just a race weekend, it's a full week. Just like anybody else's home race would be a full week for them, right? So Oscar's constantly moving during Australia. We always saw that Kimmy was constantly moving during Italy, if during Imola, and all of our English boys are going to be completely not, they're going to be completely moving all the time during Silverstone, right? So, but Monaco is different. Monaco is home race for everyone because it's technically speaking one of three F1 home races, right? It's one of the original three. So everything is glitz and glam. This is like the glitzy glammy one, right? Then you have your Silverstone, which is kind of like your classic F1, just camping, whole like just English, right, vibe. And then you have your Monza, which is your speed temple and just your Italian home base. You have those three. Those are like the three you want to pay attention to. And this one is the first of those three. So people put a lot
so
of weight
much
on this.
pain. So much pain hearing you say that so eloquently because one of my great regrets as a fan, I can't ever get over it because he was so fast there. This is so off topic, but you triggered me. The fact that Kimi Raikkonen never won at Monza kills me. He was my favorite driver, in case you haven't noticed. It kills me to this day because what you're saying is so true that there are three tracks everyone wants to win and are like the holy grail of Formula One. And I hate that Kimi pretends like he doesn't care. He's like, oh no, they all have the same points. That's not what it's about. And it's one of those things that, like, I totally agree. It almost feels like your career is incomplete if you haven't won those classic tracks, the Monzas, the Silverstones, and the Monacos. So, anyways, uh, let's not turn this into something else. Back to your point, I totally agree. So I think what you're saying was supported by the events of this weekend and in general the way people look at these tracks. So I totally
Yeah,
agree with that.
and to your point, yes, there were some tense radio calls. Do I think that it was specifically tense from Alonso this time around? No, he's always been very tense, especially because he knows that now they have something underneath them that has potential, right? So, and this is Newey's first time at a race weekend in Aston Martin Green. So
Hmm.
he knows what the potential they have moving forward and what they already have under them, we don't know that yet because we haven't seen everything because Newey's still working on updates. This is the first time he's been in the paddock not in Red Bull uniform. Well, he was never in Red Bull uniform, but still,
Yeah.
like
I mean,
this is his first time. This is the first time that Aston Martin's gonna fully get to unlock everything that they have. Well, not fully get to unlock, but like you know what I mean. Basically, just Newey being there, I think, puts extra pressure on Fernando Alonso to perform, and I think that it's might be the reason he had that tense moment, but also it being the Monaco Grand Prix does not help.
so let's talk about okay. So let's talk about Aston, and then I want to pivot to Red Bull after and kind of touch some of the teams after that. But since we're on Aston, let's talk about Aston. So first thing, I totally agree with what you're saying. I want to point out one thing that I noticed was that Adrian Newey, his presence alone has a huge impact. That's indisputable. Didn't he technically say that he's not actually working on the 2025 car, that he's only had these
No,
so-called like lunchtime conversations with the designers and he's like pitching some ideas. I don't think he's actually working on this car. At the same time, like recently Aston has had like a massive uptick in form, right? Like the car's gotten a lot better in the past two races, and now we see Newey at the track. I can see why people will put those together, right? How do you think about that? I mean, I think it's too coincidental. Like, I know they're saying that Newey isn't working on the car, but like just when he shows up in the paddock, now they're super quick and in Q3 they've got a car they can fight with. What's that all about?
he doesn't have to work on the car for it to improve. He just needs to tell somebody what to do.
Hmm.
He's a brilliant mind. He's one of the most brilliant minds of our F1 generation in this era, and that's shown in the RB19. Plain and simple. He's one of the last engineers that uses pen and paper. Even if he's not physically touching the 2025 car, his ideas are because people are sitting down with him. He said he's been around these areas. This is his first weekend on track. It's not his first weekend with Aston Martin. He's been at base this entire time or at home on video calls. It does not need to be in person for it to be effective.
That's a good point. That's a good point. And I think he did mention that he had identified some correlation issue between the simulator that Aston have and their car too. So you're right. He could just be telling people, he could just be giving little comments here and there. It all adds up. And hopefully, they'll they'll sort out their reliability issues because the rest of the race looked okay for them. I mean, okay, Alonso's car failed, right? He was
Mhm.
running behind Hadjar, and he had only technically lost one position net to Hamilton, I guess, because Alonso was always behind Hadjar, but then Hamilton had jumped both Alonso and Hadjar. So his
Right.
race was still going to be like solidly in the points. So the car was quick. That's what I'm trying to say here. Like, Lance was unlucky in qualifying, whatever happened there. He was out of the race. He was just completely bogged down in traffic. He made some good overtakes. He made like one really good overtake apparently, but it was really the hopes of the team for scoring points were on Alonso, and he was trailing Hadjar. I doubt he would have passed Isaac. But the point is that I was a little taken aback by his reaction because yeah, I get it. He wants to score points, but if I'm Fernando Alonso, I'm thrilled that the car is actually now competitive. Um, I just thought his reaction was a little bit harsh. Maybe you see it differently, but
I think it's
now's not the time
justified.
to be.
I think it's
I
justified.
think it's just
You make a valid point. He hasn't scored points yet. This is the longest he's gone without scoring points in a season.
like
And for somebody who is a two-time champion of this series, that's got to be frustrating. That's got to be horrific. And it's got to be the most frustrating feeling in the world because he knows he has a good car. He's just got really bad luck. Well, a combination of both at this point. You can't
I can
really blame
just
it all on
never
luck.
get over people saying this about him because the way I remember him was, in the early days, and I thought he was Mr. Lucky back then. He really lucked into a lot of wins that I don't think he deserved in the early days. Even though he's a brilliant driver, I don't think he deserved to win Hockenheim three times. I think he's actually poor at that race circuit. Okay, I think Fernando Alonso is not good at the Hockenheim race circuit, but he's won there 3 times, and Kimi's won there 0 times.
Okay.
Let's stop there before we get off topic. But all I'm trying to say here is that now his image is like, oh, the unlucky Fernando at McLaren, and the unlucky Fernando at Ferrari, and the unlucky Fernando at Aston. Well, you know what? I think you reap what you sow. There's also a reason things happen, and you can't just separate the driver all the time from the team. And I also think he hasn't been nearly as unlucky as people think. Like I don't know why people think. Why do you think? Like I'll pose the question to you. Why do you think people say he's so unlucky? I don't get that. He was very lucky early on in his career, and I think
Maybe he wasn't. Maybe he wasn't. Maybe he it was skill. I really think that you're letting your bias towards Kimmy get the best of you here, to be honest with you. As somebody who loves Kimmy and also respects Fernando and grew up as a Sebastian Vettel fan, okay? I think you're letting your bias get the best of you here, not to call you out on your own podcast,
Oh, I love it. I love it. Let's do it. Let's do
but
it.
he has skill. There's a reason he's been in the sport since before Oscar was born. His career is older than Oscar Piastri. You don't
Well,
just
he's an
get there with
amazing
luck.
talent. I'm not disputing that. I just think that where I'm coming from is this. Um, this is a driver who has an operating window like I've never seen, Fernando Alonso. I respect him. But Yarno truly beat him in 2004. Go back and look at the numbers. Truly was ahead 46 points. Alonso had 45 points by the time Monza 2004 came around. And truly left the team after Monza 2004 with 2 poles and a win. Fernando won 0 races that year, and he was generally outpaced by Truly. While Kimi and all those other Michael, they were destroying their teammates. And the next season, Alonso won the title. Guess what? Raikkonen probably lost around 7 wins that season. And then the season after that, Fernando uh, was lucky that the mass damper ban happened in the middle part of the season because he barely won anything. I don't think he even won a race other than Suzuka, which was because Michael's engine failed after the mass damper was banned. So it's not that I'm saying he's a bad driver. The guy's a genius behind the wheel. But he was lucky in '05 because Kimi's car was really unreliable. I think he was lucky in '06 because the mass damper ban came midway through the season. And then he was a disgrace in '07. He blackmailed his own team. You're telling me a guy that gets away with doing that is unlucky? I know people who have been banned from their jobs in like the securities industry or the law profession because they blackmailed their employer. You can't do that. You can't do that. And then people saying like, "Oh, he's so
I'm not
unlucky." Do
saying
you
that
read?
you can, but I'm also not saying that he did it. There's a difference between him doing it and the team doing it. There's a lot of.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: you're not separating your feelings for Kimmy from Alonso's victories, and that is not one that's
I
not
just feel
relevant
like
to
he's
today.
good. Like I just think that he's an amazing driver. He deserves some titles. I just Okay, then to wrap this up, why do you think he's being unlucky then? So fine, granted, let's say all that is true. Why do you think he's unlucky then? Like, what has been so unlucky about his career recently, apart from like a few years at McLaren where the car was really unreliable? I don't get what was so unlucky about him. Like I think he's been lucky that he's joined Alpine. Alpine were a good team. They weren't the worst team on the grid. They weren't great. Now he's
Bar
joining a
was
team that's
low
going
when
to
they
have
weren't the
Adrian
worst team on
Newey.
the grid.
No, no, no. But now he's joining Aston Martin that have Adrian Newey. Isn't that like luck? Isn't that like the luckiest thing ever? What am I missing here?
No, it's not luck when your boss has money to throw around and can hand out blank checks. That's strategic from Lawrence. That's not luck. I think you're confusing luck with strategy. Luck is Sebastian not getting knocked out of the race after flying backwards down the straight in Brazil and being able to go back and having the chance to fight back to P1. That's luck. Luck is different than strategy.
I
Because
guess that's
somebody else's car
Aston
was
strategy.
unreliable is not because somebody else's car is unreliable is not lucky for somebody else.
Isn't
That's
Alonso
unfortunate for that
lucky?
other driver. I think we need to move
Okay,
on.
I agree. I was just going to say maybe Alonso's lucky that Aston are so strategic. It goes back to what you're saying. It's part of the whole, the team operates like that. So let's move on from this. This was entertaining, but let's move on from this. And I think overall with Aston, okay, they had a DNF with Alonso, but the silver lining in the cloud is that that car has improved, and so if they can get their reliability sorted, I think Alonso will have tons of opportunities in the coming races to show what he can do. Right. So some positives there. Let's talk, Demeter. Why don't we talk about Red Bull? Um,
They
and
upset
like
me
I
a lot
felt,
today. They upset me a lot today.
okay, why is that?
As someone who became a Red Bull fan because Sebastian moved there, and then continued to be a Red Bull fan because Hannah Schmitz was there with her strategy. Strategy was non-existent today, and I know what they were waiting for, but I think that there should have been earlier signs that they realized there wasn't going to be what they were waiting for. They needed to pull him in to actually have a shot at even a podium. I don't know what they were doing. I don't know what she was thinking, but it really made me very upset that they left Max out to dry and risked a 30-second penalty for something that was never going to happen. Because when something did happen, it was only a VSC.
So, like, do you think that? So, can you like, okay, can you expand on that? So, you think that was a risky move by Red
It was
Bull,
a dumb
basically?
move. It wasn't risky. It was dumb. It was the same that Mercedes had, but they did it worse, where left both of their drivers out until like lap 68. You are mandated to do two pit stops in a race that is 78 laps. That doesn't mean you leave. And I know the people that this circuit is very prone to red flags and safety cars and all the yada 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 and cheap pit stops. There should be a point where you go, oh, this isn't going to happen anymore. And you shouldn't be changing tires to change tires. There's no such thing as a fastest lap point anymore, so there was no point in waiting for the last lap for him to go down into the pits the second time. It wasn't worth it. And they wasted an opportunity to even be on a podium. And
Demeter,
for
I don't
Yuki,
get
they
it.
kind of abandoned Yuki after he got rear-ended, but that's beside the point.
We'll get to that in a sec. We'll get to Gasly in a second. Hold on. Um, why do you think they could have even got, like, what makes you think they could have even gotten a podium? I mean, their strategy, just to recap, as you said perfectly, red flag. Hopefully, we get that red flag, and Max has a cheap pit stop or gets to change tires while he's in first. We make positions up that way, right? It was a huge gamble, and it didn't pay off. And I was also surprised that they didn't pit Max like the way Michael Schumacher did it at Silverstone in '98. They literally pitted him right at the final corner of the final lap by making him come through the pits and cross the line in the pits rather
That
than on the
only works in
penultimate.
Silverstone. And it's
I,
out
I
of the
need to.
rules now. You can't do that again.
That's what I was going to get to. I wasn't sure if they had actually like prevented that from being allowed anymore. Probably you're right there, actually. But then, like backing up for a second,
That was a freak incident where Ferrari actually was able to find a loophole and they banned it. You can't win if you're
great
not on
lost
the track.
time. What a race that was too. That was a race. But how do you think Max could have even gotten third? That's what I was trying to get at earlier, Demeter. Like, I don't see how he could have. What would
He
they
could
have
have.
done? So how?
He's made okay. Yes, Monaco is a really hard track to pass on. But if there's one person that I feel like has the gall and gumption to do so, it's Max. He is not that he has nothing to lose, but he isn't afraid of gaps, right? He lives by the Ayrton Senna way of racing, and whether he likes to acknowledge it or not. The
Yes.
issue is that he was never given the opportunity. They didn't pit him until much later. What they should have done is pit him before the actual top three pitted, because then they would have been behind him and not in front of him. They missed the opportunity to, even if they didn't want to overtake on track, overtake in the pits. You want them to win in the pits? That's how he's going to win the pits. He's going to pit earlier than Lando, Charles, and Oscar. Didn't do that. He pitted after them. Therefore, opportunity gone. It's like F2. If you pit the net lead, before the net lead, you have the opportunity to possibly overtake the net lead.
I mean, like undercut. That's what you're saying. Like
Yeah,
undercut the
undercut. Thank
leader.
you.
So problem is that I don't know if he had the speed to do that because the Red Bull had been exposed this weekend, right? Like they have a weakness when it comes to low speed tracks, and they think Spain will be way better for them. I just don't even know if they had the car to do that. But to your point, maybe they could have tried that because what they tried was a total gamble, while this was actually allowing Max to maybe make the difference a little bit, right? To like I could see a scenario where okay, they try to undercut Max. They just maybe like Lando maybe comes out just in front, but because Max is so aggressive while Lando's getting his tires warmed up, maybe Max makes a move. Who knows, right?
They lost their opportunity. You could kind of see when they started to swap from waiting for a red flag to building up enough gap to have a free pit stop. They waited too long for that to change because if they had waited long enough, the idea would be to have him hit on 77 and come out enough and with enough time to go the full round of 78. He pitted on 78. He's lucky he was in P11 or wherever, or P5, wherever he ended. He's very lucky because most races, they would have just considered him to not cross the finish line. Like, you can't. It was a really big fumble on Red Bull's part, and I think it really put a dent in their reputation
Hmm.
for strategy. Just,
On
but
Hannah Schmitz.
also, like I said earlier, for Mercedes and for Ferrari, I feel like they all went into this weekend, and I think every driver is guilty of doing this. And every team, if you aren't on pole, you basically go into the weekend thinking you've already lost the weekend. Nothing can happen from here on out because everybody wants to race clean. Doesn't mean it's going to happen that way, but everybody wants to race clean. They believe they've lost the weekend because they don't believe that anything else can happen.
I think that's a good point. In the
Not
end,
to
Max
repeat
finished
myself.
fourth. No, no, that honestly makes a lot of sense. Max finished fourth at the end of the day, and I think Red Bull will be looking at this race and saying, "Yeah, we could have done some things better." Officially, Max said that the following. I found a quote that he said after the race. So he said, "So for us to just stay out and maybe hope for a red flag or whatever, it was the only option. We could have pitted sooner, but then you just sit there in fourth anyway." Well, we'll never know. What we do know is that Max's teammate uh, grossly underperformed, but was also, unfortunately helped in that by getting hit by Gasly. So Tsunoda's race was an unmitigated disaster, in my opinion. Um, but it's also hard to judge him because he's still adapting to the Red Bull. I mean, he's an experienced driver, but we know that it's going to take some time for him to get up to speed. But there wasn't much else really I could say about Sonoda other than once Gasly hit him, and it was Gasly's fault. Gasly completely misjudged his braking. Sonoda probably had some residual issues and just wasn't really, he didn't have the pace to really make a difference. So kind of a disaster with the second car. So that's also another area for improvement. They still only have one dependable driver in that team, and this has been the case now for like half a decade. It's absurd. When are we going to find someone who can actually challenge Max consistently in that Red Bull? Maybe never. Um,
That's the issue,
yeah.
isn't it? Because it's not about Max. It's about them creating a car for both of their drivers. They've not been able to get away from just creating a car for one driver for that half a decade. And that's what's killing them. Lucky they had Checo for as long as they did in that car, and he was doing as well as he was. Something changed, and it basically killed Checo's performance because they stopped adapting to both drivers, whether they even ever were. I don't know if they ever were. They probably weren't, to be honest with you, because that's how Red Bull operates. It's always been about this one driver. And as much as I am a Max fan, I recognize when the team that I like and the driver that I like are playing favorites and need to take a step back, deflate their egos a little bit, and recalculate. It's getting ridiculous.
It is. Let's
The
just.
only thing that I would say is that I will seriously rethink the teams and the allegiances that I have if they end up being able to break the four driver rule. some unknown reason for money for whatever it is, if they swap out another driver on these teams because they're not happy, they start blaming the driver, we've got a problem. And that goes for Alpine too.
Is Helmut Marko a bully?
Yes, 100% yes. And he needs to retire and be dug up like a fossil about 1,000 years later.
Okay, and there are many people that agree with that. Um, and you know what? I'm going to go out on the record since you put your opinion out there. I'm going to put my opinion out there. This man is a bully. He's overrated because he had an amazing technical team that would definitely make the quickest car in any situation. Yeah, he found Vettel, but he also did other things that were ridiculous. And I don't want to keep talking about one driver, but we all know what happened in 2001. And we all know what happened. Okay, we all know that Marco thought Bernoldi would be a better choice than somebody else for the Sauber drive. I'm going to stop right there. But I actually think the way Marco talks to drivers and the way he just so callously replaces them, insults them. I mean, how personal did he get with Perez? This guy has some kind of complex. There's some issue going on there. It's not just about business with him. He really enjoys, I think, just like humiliating some of these drivers, picking favorites. And for what? Like, is that really why Red Bull win? Because Helmut Marko is a bully? I think it's hurting Red Bull. They don't have continuity. The drivers get too intimidated when Helmut's talking, and you only have one driver performing. That's not really how you run a team. So I have a feeling Helmut won't be there for much longer. Anyways, so it looks like the new guard and Red Bull are not huge fans of him, but he's a character, I guess. I agree with you, Demeter. That's what I'm trying to say here. I do think he definitely is very disrespectful towards some of the drivers that he hires. So we'll see how that goes. In Yuki's defense, I just want to say one thing. Um, because he had that crash in Imola, he actually had to use a old Red Bull floor spec at Monaco. So so meant that Verstappen had a bit of a car advantage, if you want to call it that, right? So tough weekend to really judge Yuki too much, don't you think? So
Well,
um,
that's what I said in the first place. They kind of threw him out once he got hit. He wasn't even hit on his own. He didn't do anything wrong. He was in his right to be there
yeah,
as Gasly came down the hill and almost hit his own teammate. And good on Franco for jumping out of the way like he did. Because otherwise you would have had a double DNF with a teammate collision.
yeah.
And it would have been really bad. And Alpine has been struggling on the marketing front, on the racing front, on the everything front for so long
Let's talk about
that it's
Alpine.
getting
Let's get into
ridiculous.
it. Let's get into it then. I was going to pivot to RB and Williams together because they both did the whole one teammate holds up the pack thing. But let's talk about Alpine, and then we can come back to RB and Williams to kind of wrap up. Um, so let's talk about Alpine because I think Alpine are just a circus right now. Like I'm not a huge fan of Flavio Briatore. I'll just go out and say it. Like I don't
No
really
one
like the
is. No
guy.
one should be.
Yeah, I mean I
And
I
if
mean
you
some people
are,
think
I
he's
seriously judge you.
yeah, and I think I get it. He's entertaining to some people. He's clearly very cunning on the business front. He's been there in some of the legendary eras of Formula One, so there's a sentimental. People like that Briatore was there with
I'm
Michael
going to
and
stop you right there.
Fernando.
I'm going to stop you right there. You said he was cunning on the business front. It gives him credit. Cheating is not credit.
Okay, okay, I like it. I listen. I think he is a cheater. I've said this many times. Preaching to the choir on this one because uh, Briatore has shown repeatedly he will break the rules and basically lie about it. You know what I mean? So um, that's not a good look. They
He is a disgusting person who should not be in the paddock, but has used his friendships and his money to get back in it. The fact that he is even allowed in the paddock is astonishing. He was banned for life. It didn't last for life, unless he's a cat, but he's not.
what's the deal with that? I really should have researched this before, but like, how is he? 'Cause I thought after Singapore '08 he was banned for life, right? That's what
Yes.
they decided. How's he back?
And
I
he
don't get
got
that.
cozy with his bestie, Bernie Ecclestone, and Bernie let him back in.
Oh, that's right. That was a few years ago, I think.
That was more than a few years ago. Ban lasted for like maybe 3 years, maybe.
Oh, okay. The more you know. Okay, I actually didn't realize that it was lifted that soon. I thought he was still banned.
Maybe
So
that's an
okay,
exaggeration, but it didn't last that long. It
okay.
lasted less
All
than
right.
10 years.
He's clearly back as the interim de facto team principal for now, and then he's a CEO as well, I think. Now, what else has Alpine been doing? Well, they signed Jack Doohan, got rid of Jack Doohan, they brought in Franco. There's no continuity there. Franco apparently only has 5 races to prove himself. I mean, what's going on with this team? Like, the car isn't that great. Gasly's making mistakes. It kind of seems like they're in free fall, no? Like, there's a lot of things being done here that just
Fabio
aren't conducive.
Briatore is the Helmut Marko of Alpine right now, as well as being the de facto team principal. He's gathering drivers, and there was a rumor that I don't know if this is true. It could, I don't haven't confirmed or anything like that he was actually Jack Doohan's manager. I don't think that's true. I think that Mick is actually his manager. But he's basically doing what Helmut Marko does, and it is really going to hurt them in the long run because they are a team that has to rely on marketing for their money. They don't have the performance to solely rely on track advantage and points. They need to be marketable. They need to be the fun team, but they're not going to get there if they keep doing this because right now you're talking about a young generation of fans that's coming into the sport that has a heart. There's a lot of women, and
Yep.
women are more empathetic.
This is
And
a
if you
really
keep
good
throwing
point,
people out
actually.
like trash, it's going to make people hate you. Same thing goes for Red Bull.
I, you know what? I commend you on that because I think that's a really good point that a lot of people miss. The young generation. It's not just that they're social media savvy and all that. I think it's a much more sensitive and empathetic generation.
We pay
And
attention,
right, like it's not like
and we can find everything you bury.
right. So it's like in past years, maybe guys in a pub may have been like smoking and laughing about like, oh yeah, like did you see what that team principal did to that driver? You really got one on him. And now I think that's just not tolerated if it's something that's too personal or disrespectful or abusive, whatever you want to call it.
Long story
Um,
short,
yeah,
you're talking basically what I'm saying is Crashgate would have been found out whether or not PK Jr. came forward. It may have taken a few more years, but we would have found out.
I mean, yeah, Heifeld knew right away. I think everybody watching that race I honestly, I even suspected something was up. I just didn't know what, but I just thought that was too coincidental to be fair. But to your point, I agree. Like totally agree there. Yeah.
That's the point that I'm making. We're more attentive, more empathetic. You can't just throw people out like trash and expect it to not have consequences because they're not attached. This is the era of driver fans. Every person, well, not every person, but most people that I talk to who are new fans are fans of drivers, not the teams, because the teams have killed their chances.
Can you elaborate? I don't get that. Like, what do you mean by that? They've killed their chances. Like they've just not acted properly, or
They haven't acted properly. They act like they're not human. So for to put this into business terms, right? You as an entity are a human in the eyes of the law, right? You don't act as a
yeah.
human in bodily way. You act as a human in your marketing and in your legal, right? As an entity that holds value is recognized as a human.
Mhm.
So it's a one entity. A driver is also another entity that can be sub-bought by the team. Does that make sense?
Totally, totally makes sense.
Okay. So in order to be a fan, you can choose the team and be a fan of both drivers and whoever they pick. Make it easy if you can't choose, if that's how you want to see
Mhm.
it. Or you can follow a driver to a new team. This is, you really see in this day and age, you see the former more in sports like hockey and baseball and basketball, where it's a team sport through and through, and they change players all the time. Here in Formula One and in motorsports in general, you see more of, let's put it this way, you see more driver fans because the teams have done so much towards one driver, say Daniel Ricciardo and McLaren, that all the McLaren fans that were McLaren fans because of Daniel don't care about McLaren anymore. They don't like McLaren anymore. They hate McLaren even. Like it's bad. It runs deep because they don't like how he was treated.
Yeah.
Or McLaren has
Well,
just done things that are slimy. It's really people look up history now because history is going to come and bite you in the butt, whether you like it or not.
I think there's an element of that. I think it's to an extent always been there, but you're right. Now it's really emphasized totally, and I'm surprised so many people were so offended when Ricardo was treated like that because that's I think McLaren are interestingly run right now. I'm not a huge fan of their leadership, even though they're winning. I grew up in the era of the great Ron Dennis, Sir Ron Dennis, um, Steve Hallam, Martin Whitmarsh. That's always been McLaren's ethos. This cold, precise, scientific precision. I also lived in that area in Surrey, pretty close to Woking, so I was just devastated when they lost that ethos, and you got this like I don't know, I called Zach Brown who gets the car orange, and the team kind of becomes more fun, and it's ironic because actually I think that those are things that I think you are saying are smart for McLaren to do, and getting rid of Ricardo was the way they did it was disrespectful. He didn't even get a proper send off to Toro Rosso, and then at Toro Rosso he was completely mistreated as well, but in the eyes of many fans. So what you're saying is like even if it was a business decision, and even if even if the replacement was better, the way it was done was disrespectful, right?
Yes.
And
And people look for respect.
that in itself is causes people to be antagonistic. It's just ironic because we're going to disagree on this because I actually think Daniel Ricciardo deserved to be fired and absolutely was garbage at his time in McLaren. Okay, like this is where you and I are going to disagree on this, which is great. But that's actually not a reason why I dislike McLaren. If they did one right thing, was that they got rid of Ricardo because I couldn't stand that guy. You know,
Just because you can't
like
stand someone doesn't mean it's a good decision.
I don't think he was even a good driver. Like I honestly think he was so flattered by 2014. Like Jacques Villeneuve said, what has he really done since then? Can you name
Okay, well,
one
if you agree with
overtake?
Jacques Villeneuve, that tells me everything I need to know about you.
Here's the thing, Demeter. Let me say one thing about it, and then we'll move on to Williams and RB and wrap this up quickly. So, because your points are really good, so I want to like present my points here. Give me one overtake Daniel did when he left Red Bull that was memorable without the engine braking of that Red Bull. Like, just give me one that you say was a classic overtake that wasn't done in a Red Bull. That's all I'm
You're
looking
asking
for.
me to do something that I can't do because I'd have to go back and research. That's not very fair, is it?
Well, no, I mean, it's
Because
not
I
even
don't
okay.
keep
I
all
mean,
these things in my brain because I don't hold grudges towards drivers I've never met.
really right. But the thing is that I just felt like his personality was like so popular that people would like almost give him a pass, and
Sure.
that's not right.
Because Netflix made him the protagonist. He
Exactly. But
benefited
is that
from
it?
marketing, and that's okay.
That's my
He
point.
brought, he helped them do what they needed to do. He helped revive Formula One, and if you want to hate him for that, fine. But Formula One was a
I hate
dying sport
him.
before 2016 and before Drive to Survive, and now it's thriving. So you get to keep your sport because Daniel Ricciardo did his dues, even if he called Netflix a bunch of cunts. And they are,
You know
in
what?
my
That's a good
language.
argument. That's a good argument. I respect that a lot. So let's move on from this because I think you and I could talk about this for another hour if we really wanted to. Um, and I love your take on it, honestly. You really brought up some really interesting points. So I really do want to keep discussing this, but we should probably move to Williams and RB together. Maybe we could do like a quick summary of them. You touched on it in the beginning. I thought RB was pretty awesome in the way that they managed their strategy. Hadjar was flying this weekend, and even if Lawson was a little bit off Hadjar's pace, I thought Liam was such a team player in this race. They almost looked like a dynamic duo. You know, this was really impressive by both drivers and the team. Even if Lawson, was slower than Hadjar or whatever, he played his role perfectly. He really opened up that gap. He allowed the gap to be opened up for Hadjar to pit into. He did a brilliant decision to run a short stint on the softs so that he can get his two pit stops in early. And then somehow Lawson still got points. I mean, that was so impressive. So I have nothing else to really say other than I really they were the most impressive team to me, flat out, like RB class of the field. And then Williams, the same thing. They did it, but I don't think they did it as well as RB did because it looked a bit dicey there for a while with Albon. Like you weren't sure if they had made the right call or if they were going to finish in the points, but they did as well. I just think RB executed it a bit better than Williams did. What do you think?
I think that, like I said before, VCarb did very well. They executed strategy the way that I was hoping some of the top teams would. Williams, they are not necessarily having one driver carry the team, but they are recognizing that one of their drivers is in a brand new car and in a brand new setup, and it's going to take a little bit longer for him to get up to speed than Alex. And they're using that to their advantage for Alex to get higher up so that they're allowing Carlos to kind of play the team game until he gets the full feel of the car. I don't think that they're
Totally.
actually asking him to sit back. I think they're giving him that grace period.
Yeah.
They said it
Which
themselves.
which Lawson did not get at Red Bull, right? I mean, Sainz is getting a lot of races to prove himself. Lawson got 2 races. Sainz is a much more proven driver. I'm not comparing them, but it shows that James Vales, I think, has a very the team boss has a very mature and professional approach to his drivers. Don't you think? Um, but here's my thing with Williams. I had a problem with Alex Albon in this race. What my problem was? I thought he defended in a very dangerous manner. He was slowing down at the apex of the Nouvelle chicane and other places in the third sector, and he nearly caused a massive crash at least 2 or 3 times. And Carlos and Alex aren't stupid drivers. They're positioning the car comfortably to defend. But I just think it was a bit over the line at points. I mean, even Russell mentioned that it got dangerous with the way Alex was it was it was defending, and then that basically frustrated George, and that's why George just cut the chicane because he's like, well, I'm not going to put up with this. Um, and he got his drive through. But I actually think the stewards should have been looking at Albon's throttle trace and maybe considering penalizing him for that because the worst crashes happen when there's that differential in speed in the braking zone where one guy is flying behind you and the guy in front suddenly backs off unexpectedly. That's when you have these titanic incidents.
Well, isn't that your, I'm not disagreeing, but isn't that your job as a driver to anticipate what's going on ahead of you? Not everybody's going to have the
Just
same, not everybody's going to have the same driving style. In fact, nobody's going to have the same driving style. They might take from other people, but they're not going to have the same driving style. And it's their job to execute strategy while anticipating everything that's happening in front of them. And it might have been Williams' strategy to have him build up a gap. In fact, it was. So he was just doing what he was asked. And if that's on the team, that's on the team.
yeah, I mean that's one way of looking at it. Being dangerous driving is dangerous driving. Like I don't care if the team does it or the driver did it on his own. Like to me, those are the things like you need to look at. But it's a good point. Like he definitely it worked. Plan he didn't get penalized. They got their points. He frustrated the Mercedes driver. Can't fault him. He did a good job. It's just I'm not a huge fan of brake tests. I'm not a huge fan of drivers playing dirty tricks in the braking zone because we've
Is it
all watched
dirty?
long enough. Sorry.
Is it dirty? Or is it strategy?
Yeah, I mean that's the
Is
question,
it his
right? Like
if it happens 3, 4 times, is it just his line? Once, maybe. I think it sometimes once you establish a pattern, I don't think it becomes dirty. I think it becomes a habit. I'm not saying
interesting,
it's right. I'm not saying it's right. The last thing I'm saying, but I'm saying that it's probably not conscious anymore.
debatable. I mean that's an interesting take. I mean if you look at it like that, then yeah, I don't think I'm not a like I think Alex is a soft driver. Like I've never gotten over that radio message. Do you remember that one year where he just started crying about like why are they racing me so hard and all that
Okay.
stuff? It's
Well,
like
I don't agree with the word soft to anybody on that grid. I think that's
okay,
kind of disrespectful to say, considering that they are putting a lot of strain on their bodies and putting their lives at risk every weekend. But sure,
fair,
you can have
fair.
your opinions. We could disagree because I'm sure even your favorite drivers that you expect now have had the same issues. Even
I don't think
even last
Kimi
year,
Raikkonen, for example, never brake tested someone. Like, to me, a brake test is the lowest thing
That's
you can
not
do.
true. I tell you right
I don't
now,
think
that's
so.
not true.
Maybe. I know. Okay. I mean, maybe, maybe not. I don't think he
Every
did. I don't
driver has
remember.
brake tested everyone. That is not true. It's part of it.
Okay. You know what? I agree with you to a point. You know what?
There's
The
no such
FIA
thing as
didn't
a
penalize out.
100% clean driver. Not a thing.
It's true. No, no, that is 100% true. I agree with you. I agree with you. I think you bring good points, and I like what you said there about if it becomes a habit, it becomes strategy, and it's up to the driver behind to anticipate that. It's just I don't know why. I guess it just rubbed me the wrong way when I was watching it because I know it can lead to a big accident. But look, I think most people probably agree with what you're saying because fans loved it. The FIA didn't even look into it. So maybe they had access to all the throttle traces and they said, yeah, he's doing nothing wrong. So yeah, maybe I'm just being a grumpy old man here. And yeah, maybe I should just give him his credit and his due there. So um, which I won't because I don't like Alex Albon. I'm sorry, I just don't like I don't like him. But
That's the
I'm willing
issue.
to
We went
set.
into that issue earlier. You don't
We
like
will
somebody,
settle.
so
We will
you
settle
basically
on
tell them
this.
that they suck. You
We
have
will
to go through these
settle.
reviews. You have to try and go through these reviews on merit, not on what
Yeah,
you
no, no,
feel.
it's on merit because I don't think that slowing down on the entrance of corners is acceptable driving. Like that's disgraceful to me. Why are you slowing down on the exit of a major braking zone at one of F1's most dangerous tracks? I just don't get that. Like that's all I'm saying, Demeter. Like it's not that I'm honestly not trying to say like Albon sucks or that Albon should leave F1. I respect his talent. Grew up with George and all that. Like he's clearly been good for a very long time. And I'm only semi joking about the radio thing. I just really had a problem with the way he was defending. Like I just thought like it was too much. But you know what? Your points are actually very cogent on this. So I'm actually going to defer to you and say strategy. He didn't get penalized. Williams got their points. Well executed. We'll just leave it at that. I think it was well executed by the team and the drivers, and there's not much else I can say about it, frankly. So it becomes too subjective, I think. So if I continue, so we covered those two. I think the other two teams that I wanted to just finish up on were Mercedes because we didn't really talk about them that much. And
There really
then maybe
wasn't much to talk about.
that's true. Um, what are your thoughts on that then? On Mercedes, like what a frustrating that race that was for them. Absolutely no man's land, stuck in the midfield. Right? That's how I looked at it.
Well, at the risk of repeating something for the third time, Odo said after the race that they basically went into the weekend, well, they went into today thinking they had already lost, which is the wrong attitude to have because they didn't have pole. And to be honest with you, they didn't have a car. I don't think I've seen in recent memory a car just quit in the tunnel.
Oh yeah, totally.
So they need to get their stuff back together and go into Spain. And if they fail at Spain, we've got a big problem because that's the place where they have the most data.
Well, look, I think we
So,
agree to disagree on a lot of things on this podcast so far. We've agreed to disagree on pretty much a lot of topics, which is awesome. But on this one, I think we're both in complete agreement that, yeah, I think in Spain, hopefully they'll have a better go of it. Um, there was nothing they could really do. It was a frustrating race. Not much happened. I get George's frustration when he cut the chicane, but he was never going to get away with that. The question I had for you, Demeter, was Andrea Antonelli's race because he got in a little bit of an incident in the first lap, right, with Bortoleto. Went for a gap. Bortoleto had to like get out of it. Went into the barrier. Then Antonelli was just kind of there after that. Any thoughts on him? Thoughts on his race?
that should have been a
Curious.
penalty on Kimmy. It should have been a
You think
penalty
so,
on
huh?
Kimmy. The fact that it wasn't was kind of shocking. I know that it was probably a racing incident too, just as much, because that is such a thin corner. It was not a good place to try and pass, but he saw an opportunity and he took it. And again, if you don't go for the gap, you're not a racing driver.
So I'm
But
gonna.
there's appropriate times, and that was not one. I do think that it was a little weird that they went so harshly on George, but they didn't touch Kimmy at all when it comes to the stores room.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a And again, like I think your point of view is entirely valid. I'm gonna have to go ahead and just flat out disagree with that because I actually think Antonelli was very much entitled to that move. Because if you think about it, the gap was there, and you know, if Bortoletto's opened the door, Kimi hasn't made contact with him. Bortoletto scared himself so him, Bortoletto scared himself off into the barrier. Kimi doesn't have to give space there when Bortoletto is the one that has to back off, right? And Bortoletto just got caught out by his own idling and drove into the barrier. Like it wasn't really Kimi's fault. That's racing. Like there's a gap, you go for it. Not always, but I think it was perfectly valid in that scenario. So I don't even think there should have been a penalty, Demeter. Like I'm gonna have to disagree with you on that one because, like again, like what exactly did Antonelli do there that was wrong in your opinion? Like why was that move illegal? Like I didn't see anything wrong with it.
Wasn't ahead in the apex. Wasn't.
But if he
Simple and plain. He
wasn't
wasn't.
ahead,
It wasn't his corner.
was in his corner. But okay, counter to that, good point. But counter to that, Bortoletto left the door open. Like he left the door open. He had space to go there. Clearly, he made the corner. Why can't he put his nose in there and
Didn't say you
force
couldn't, but it
Bortoletto?
doesn't mean that you've had so many. This is the problem with this year. People, the stories has been so inconsistent. Any other race, it would have been a penalty for pushing somebody off track. It's not. Why not? I don't know. Doesn't matter anymore. What's done is done.
Right. Well, this goes back to the age-old adage that we've always discussed on this podcast. We need more consistent stewarding in Formula One. Permanent stewards, consistency in the stewards' room. It's just the age-old discussion. There's always inconsistencies every year, and that's unacceptable. So, come on, FIA, like let's get some consistency here. Um, okay, and then who have we not spoken about? I guess Sauber at this case.
Hmm.
Are we missing
There's
anybody
really
else?
nothing to say about Sauber. I don't have anything to say about Sauber. I rarely pay attention to them as it is because they're always at the back.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about Haas either, but I'd
Oh,
rather
right.
not.
And we should because Esteban Ocon drove a blinder of a race and weekend. He is amazing at this circuit, in my opinion. He really outperformed the car. I know people don't like that expression, but he did a great job. He was hanging on to the other cars in front of him. Behrman was really unlucky, so it's hard to judge him on this weekend with everything that happened. But I think the Haas car is not exactly at the level of the cars in the midfield. I think it's probably one of the worst cars, but I think Ocon really performed it this weekend. That's how I look at it. He was pretty flawless, I thought.
I'm gonna be honest with you. Esteban rubs me the wrong way, so I don't really pay attention to him, but I will give him his flowers. He got points. He went up to was P7, so 6 points, which is great. Every point counts.
6 points is no joke. Why does Esteban Ocon rub you the wrong way? I really want to know this. Because you're not the only person that said that. It seems like he just isn't the most popular driver. My theory was always because he gave Alonso a hard time and he gave Perez a hard time. Maybe I'm again, maybe I'm being simplistic. Like, why is Ocon the guy that nobody likes? Like, why is
There's
he the wrong way?
it's not important other than how he's treated teammates in the past, and how he treated Max in the past.
Oh, come on. You mean the Brazil incident in 2018?
It doesn't matter what it was. It matters that it's not just one person.
Yeah,
And I never
that's
said I
true.
hated him. I said he rubs me the
I
wrong
know, I know,
way.
I know.
I am able to recognize that he has skill.
I Yeah, I think I can see where people are coming from on that. I just think sometimes his blocks are a little bit over the line, but I love that he took it to Fernando Alonso because so many teammates would have been intimidated by Fernando and just backed off. Like, look at Stoffel Van Dorn. Van Dorn is not slower than Ocon. Van Dorn is a quick driver. He was so fragile. Like it seemed like as soon as Alonso had the edge on him, Van Dorn would disappear. Ocon really took it to Alonso, and sometimes, yeah, he went over the line, but I respect him for that. He came from very humble beginnings, and he races hard. He races hard, and I really respect drivers that don't get intimidated by other drivers. They go for it. they race Max, they race Fernando like it's their last race. And that's going to definitely annoy some fans. Like they'll just be like, "Well, why are you?" And yeah, he did it with Perez too. But at the end of the day, um, you know, I think it was generally just part of his makeup. He's a feisty driver. Sometimes he gets it wrong, but I find him entertaining when he's racing others because he really pushes the limits um, in ways that other drivers don't. But that's neither here or there. We can agree to disagree on that as well. So, Demeter, we are coming to a close here. I'd love to get your take on the Monaco Grand Prix in general. Do you think, like, I know you said we have to wait and see, but can we really see an F1 without Monaco? I mean, surely that's just ridiculous.
No,
It's never,
I don't think
right?
we can, and I don't think it's ever going to happen. I think they're going to make it, even if it becomes a race not on the calendar, it's going to become a ceremonial race if it comes down to it in the way, way future. It's part of history, and if we erase history, we forget it, and then we were doomed to repeat it.
Well
And
said.
maybe that's an over exaggeration, but it's still the same principle. You don't erase history. We're erasing enough history as it is, getting rid of Spa as a permanent track on the calendar, as much as I don't like Spa and it gives me major anxiety.
Wait, Spa gives you anxiety. Why is that?
That's
Because it's a
not
scary
relevant,
circuit.
other than that's not relevant than the amount of crashes and severe crashes that have happened on it.
Isn't that what
But just
makes
to
racing
further my
interesting?
point, just to
Okay,
further my point and stay on track, we're getting rid of these historic races, and that's not okay, right? So
totally.
they're following money, which I understand. It's a business first, sport second now, which kind of sucks, but it's the way the world works.
I totally agree
You
with you.
have to think of it as preserving as much as you can because Monaco does bring in quite a bit of money. You're going to see Monaco on the calendar whether somebody likes it or not. I know a lot of people don't like
Mm,
Monaco anymore. I am one of the minority that loves Monaco and will always love Monaco because of what it stands for.
I love Monaco. I love Monaco too. Honestly, I think it's thrilling to see cars race there. It has such history. I generally like extremely dangerous circuits as well. I'm a little different to the way you described it earlier. I like the tracks where things can go horribly wrong. That's what makes racing interesting in my perverse world, I guess. But let's talk about like the race then. Just like we're gonna wrap up here. Great discussion. What would you rank this race out of 10 or out of 5? You can choose the scale you want, and then give me your top 3 drivers, and then maybe your flop of the race as well, and I'll give you mine as well.
Out of 10, I give it a 5. It wasn't spectacular, but it wasn't terrible, right? It wasn't Japan.
Yeah, Japan was brutal. Um, I'll give it a
But
4 or 5. Yeah, like that. And
we
my
also knew
top,
that coming in.
we did. Um, top 3 drivers. I'll give you my top 3 quickly. Number 1, Hajar. Number 2, Ocon. Number 3, Lawson. Are my top 3 because they outperformed their car or they were really strong with the team in terms of supporting the team, like Lawson. So those guys just really impressed me. I thought they just really locked in and did their job perfectly. So I'm going to give it a little bit of a different top 3 than usual suspects, let's say. Thoughts on that?
No, I mean mine were are definitely different. I'll say um Lewis, Isaac, and Lando, maybe, just because he was able to keep it steady even after that first corner, which is impressive. I'm sure a lot of drivers would have lost their nerve and ended up in the wall anyways.
I Lewis number 1 because he came through the field a little bit. Is that the reason?
Hmm.
I feel like he was still off Charles's pace even in clean air. So it's like I get it. He drove well, but he's still slower than his teammate. But that's a good top 3. That makes sense. I really want to put Ocon in there because I really think he outperformed his car. So we're gonna have to disagree again. Agree to disagree on that. Flop of the race for me is Pierre Gasly. Completely misjudged the braking zone and damaged another car. You could have even ended up worse, like you mentioned earlier. So that's the second race in a row that Gasly, in my opinion, has been the worst driver in the race. Imola, he scared himself off the track when he was racing Charles. And this weekend, he just, yeah, completely made an unforced error. So I'm going with Gasly as the flop.
I'm going as Mercedes as a whole.
I could, that's a good one too. So definitely not their finest weekend. Well, I think ultimately it was great discussing this with you, Demeter. I think we covered a lot today. Monaco doesn't always give us classics, but as we've both shown, there's always something to talk about. Such an illustrious and important racetrack. So we're off to Spain next. Thanks for listening to the DRS Train podcast. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon. Take care.